Hello and welcome. This is Target Tuesday, where we talk about epistomarketing. Hello and welcome, and how to turn data into money. Looks like we're streaming. We're ready to go. I'm John Miglosh with the Wisconsin Direct Marketing Association and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. Let's dig in, have a little adventure. Today we're going to be talking about something pretty basic, but not as basic as last week. Last week we got into the data and how we know things about data in a sort of a general way, sort of the scientific method. And today we're going to talk about how we apply that to marketing. And everybody loves data. I was going to say everybody loves bacon. Yeah, everybody loves bacon too. Lent starts like yesterday. Nevertheless, bacon is the thing. Data is the new bacon, but data on its own isn't very much. I went around Nemoa, which is a show where lots of old direct marketers congregate. It's our last bastion. And I asked some of the leaders, including the president at the time, what is direct marketing? And I think I got 6 interviews. They're up on YouTube somewhere. I got 6 interviews, and every one of them said direct marketing is generating a measurable response. And this is a fight I've been in for at least 30 years, back when I just started, because first of all, it seemed completely vacuous to me to say measurable when what we need is measurement and what we really need is testing. But the Direct Marketing Association, no longer in existence, said, well, we want everybody to understand direct marketing. We want everybody to be a direct marketer so that our association will be really big, I think. And I said, if everybody's a direct marketer, then no one is. And at the time, I was working at an ad agency when I started thinking about this, because my ad agency said, well, why do you think you're different? We place ads and we see results. We put an ad in about a store opening and more people come to the store. We put an ad in about melons and the melons sell better. And if we keep track, then we have a measurable response. Even if we don't keep track, it's measurable. We could measure if we don't worry about it. All we worry about is that something happens most of the time. And that got me thinking, what do I do? What is it that makes direct marketing so different? Because it did seem to me to be different. I started doing direct mail in about 78. I started as a direct marketing consultant in 81. I've mailed tens of millions of pieces directly, selected the names, and helped put them in the mail. My clients have mailed hundreds of billions of pieces. You say, that's not possible. I used to ask that question. What do you think my biggest client has mailed? And it happened to be the U.S. Postal Service, which mails 160, I don't know what, million a year or billion a year. It's an astronomical number. I know it's astronomical. So I've been involved with a lot of mail. But I actually started in design and copy and then circulation and database analytics. And I kind of got dragged into the database analytics because, unlike most of the IT people at the shows, I could get up and talk about what we were doing, even if I didn't totally understand it. I was like the guy selling nuclear power plants. Good song and dance. So let's talk a little bit about the fundamentals of direct marketing. Why was I so excited about it? Well, my boss, Vic Hunter, told me it was a way to find out what marketing ideas are really working. And even more profoundly, to find out what the exact impact of those hypotheses were. So, if you had a chemical mixture or even a recipe, and you said, what happens if I leave out the salt in this cake? Cake is sweet, shouldn't need salt, or bread. And a lot of Italian bread actually has no salt, and I learned when I went to Tuscany that there was a high tax on salt for a while, and so they learned to make stuff without salt. It doesn't taste the same, let's just say, but it's not too hard to figure it out. You could bake a cake with salt and bake a cake without salt, or bake bread. More, I know more about baking bread, and see the difference. Or you could try putting yeast in, leaving yeast out, head to head. Put them in the oven, see what happens. Of course, you'll see pretty quickly one rises and one doesn't. Not. It might still rise if you left it sit around for a day or two. There's natural yeast in the air, which is one of the problems. It's hard to isolate. If you remember the famous experiments of Louis Pasteur, people said, the maggots come with the meat. Meats fundamentally have maggots. And Louis said, I don't think they do. And he put a screen over the meat in a glass jar and put another piece of meat without the screen. And the one that, the flies could land on got the maggots and the other one didn't. Or the spoil with the swan-necked flask. So the whole idea is that you can isolate variables. You can say, well, what's the difference between putting free or putting money saving in the headline? Does that change things? And you can even track it down to the number of orders, the number of the average order size, the profit per piece, all of that stuff. And because you can carefully measure by isolation of the causal impact, you can then build explosive growth and profit because you know how much to fund the winner. You know how much it's going to do better than the control. Now, it usually doesn't work out quite as well as you hoped. And we may get into that probably next week. We're going to talk about some specific tests. But ultimately, you make more money. But here's the part I really liked about it. You get full credit for your contribution. So at the ad agency, they started pushing me to the front at the ad pitches, and I would say, we can tell what's going on in your advertising. We can give you accountable advertising. And if the president or the CEO or the CFO were in there, they thought that was really duck soup. So we won 5 out of 5 pitches while I was there, and I was only there for a couple of years. Now, what was interesting was after the president left and the ad manager came in a couple of weeks later to do the first creative meetings, I didn't get invited. And they had nice snacks, and I always wondered, why didn't they invite me? So after the 4th or 5th one, I finally said to the creative director, hey, I'm not getting the snacks. And they said that they came here because of the accountable advertising. And he said, yeah, we know. But you might bring your portfolio, and your portfolio is ugly. That's not going to win us any awards. And I hate to say this, but we're not that high on this accountability either. We don't really want to know how well it works in a quantified sense. We'd rather just know how well it worked, in driving traffic or in some other metric that's a little more vague, because we really do want to win awards. That's how we grow our agency. That's how come we got the guys coming to us to find out about what's distinctive about us. If it weren't for the awards, you wouldn't have gotten to pitch your accountable advertising. So we want to win awards. The ad manager wants to win awards for their portfolio, and that's why we don't want you to come. And if by some chance we don't do as well as you thought, then we're going to not win the awards, even though we might have the best creative in the show. So thank you very much. And to their credit, that worked well. agency's been successful for decades. And we did do a mailing where we tried some testing. And what I didn't appreciate was that the city of Milwaukee, the zip codes, aren't defined by the city of Milwaukee in general. They're actually defined by the freeway system a little bit. They loop out into the west. They're defined by where the postal service can get there fast and where they were okay with delivering. So the city of Milwaukee extends far out in little tentacles into the surrounding suburbs. So when I asked for a test for Warner Cable, who was only allowed to sell in the city of Milwaukee proper, we ended up mailing much of the suburbs because the zip codes extended out into those areas. And we solicited many people who were very excited to hear about getting cable. They thought the cable was coming to their suburb. This was back a long time ago in the 80s. And they weren't allowed to sell it. So it was a pretty unmitigated disaster. So, sometimes just do the TV commercials. Don't worry too much about the testing. But all that said, off we go. Let's talk some more. So here's why people say, oh, we just want to have a measurable response. This is the definition. This is kind of an excerpt. An interactive system of marketing that uses one or more advertising media to affect a measurable response and or transaction at any location. You have to ask yourself, what is an interactive system? I really don't know. At any location as opposed to no location, I think they were after not at a store, but that's not what it says. Response and or, so if you click or your eyes move or people show up, all those things are responses. And measurable, like I said, that doesn't mean we even measured. And so, I used to have coffee with Bob Stone, one of the authors of the definition, and I said, Bob, how could you do this? And he said, well, we couldn't imagine that somebody was able to measure and wouldn't. We couldn't imagine that if you measured, you wouldn't be testing. But he said, you're right, John. It's all about testing. We were all doing it, so we assumed everyone else would too. So I've used up all my time, and I know that the limit of these things is short. So I hope you enjoyed the stories. Next time we'll get on to the challenges of that definition and how to overcome it. I'm John Miglash for Target Tuesday. Have a great day. Like and share. Bye-bye.